Bonjour, merci à vous d'être là pour notre première conférence professionnelle. Donc ce matin, nous allons parler de séries internationales et de l'avenir de la production internationale avec, nous avons la chance d'avoir monsieur Tom Fontana, producteur et showrunner entre autres de Borgia, mais je ne vais pas le présenter parce que c'est osé énormément de séries, et monsieur Dick Wolf, producteur de Chicago Fire, mais aussi de toute la franchise Law and Order. Voilà. Évidemment, on va parler anglais, mais il y a une traduction simultanée pour ceux qui ont besoin de détails. First of all, I would like to start with, when you are creating both of you shows, did you have the international aspect in mind right at the beginning? Did you think only as producing the show for the channel who asked for it or for the country who asked for it, or did you have right in mind the fact that this topic, this subject might be interesting for international or not, that you have to change things a little bit for this country or another country to have it? Dick?
He does, I don't.
Is this thing out? Oh, it is.
I don't know, did I? Yes, I guess so.
In terms of are we talking Borgia and Copper or Borgia alone?
We're talking in general, when you're creating series.
Well, I mean, the Borgia was created specifically for a European market. It was not created for an American market in the sense of it's now on Netflix, or not on Netflix, streams through Netflix. But it was totally a European conceived and financed production. Copper, on the other hand, was created 5, 6, 7 years ago for AMC in America, and they passed on it, and BBC America took it, and so it's mostly for BBC America.
But when creating it, did you have the international market right in mind? Did you think about how the subject, how the characters might be perceived by, I don't know, Italian or German television?
No. I would say the only thing we tried to do was represent the population in New York City during the 1860s, which included a lot of Irish, obviously. So we were able to cast Irish actors, and we wanted to have one British character. So that was the only concessions made. I think that when you, during cop shows, and Dick, you can obviously speak to this as well, there's a kind of international interest in cop shows so that they sort of don't need to be regionalized, if you know what I mean.
It really does not enter my mind because my buyer is NBC, and they really could care less about the foreign values of the shows. They like it when they sell foreign because it knocks off, but I never think of the shows, if they're successful in the US, they usually sell them foreign. They do have a sales department that does that. And the ultimate aim on most of my shows is to get to format sales. And that's a totally, as you know, a different business, because then you're creating the shows to be produced locally with local talent, and then you do have to have an awareness of what you're doing.
I'm actually curious about that, Dick, in the sense of when you did Law and Order UK, I mean, the legal system between the two, between America and Britain, is so...
almost exactly the same.
Is it really?
Yeah, they just wear wigs. But it's the same, literally it's the same common law. It was more of a... It would have been a problem in France 15, 20 years ago. It's not anymore when there was the Napoleonic Code versus, that was a different system.
So they have discovery, all that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's literally almost exactly the same.
But, I mean, for example, when you propose Chicago Fire, did NBC, or did you have in mind the fact that this topic, this thing can attract people not only from US, but from other countries, that firemen in Chicago might be interesting?
I hope so. I mean, but it's not a primary consideration, it's a secondary consideration. And you know, the question is, do you want to, I think Law and Order sold into 153 territories.
And it was not supposed to be that way right at the beginning?
No, because everybody said it's a show that won't travel, but it did travel. And then when it came time to make European versions, though, it was easier to make SVU or criminal intent. It made more sense because there was no legal component.
Right. How did you, both of you, analyze the trends of the networks next season? Nearly half the drama, the new drama for next season will be genre show, fantasy, science fiction, things like that. Do you think, how do you analyze that? Do you think the US address now a younger skin of viewers? Do you think this kind of show might sell internationally, or that it will not be the case?
Well, for me, I'm really going to let Dick answer this one, because for me, the good thing about working in cable and working in Europe is I don't actually know what the new shows on the air are in America. I'm about 3 years behind almost every show that's been on television in the last 3 years. I have the DVDs, and but...
Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there has not been much revolutionary.
But in terms of the schedules that they announced, is it the same old, or is
yes.
it is? Oh, it is, yeah. Except for Chicago Cops, right?
Except for Chicago PD, of course.
Yeah. And for you, Dick, how did you analyze the new trends of the season, the fact that there is a lot of fantasy show? Do you think it's because all the movie like Avengers or things like that are doing big business in the movie theater, they are looking for a new scheme?
I've been doing this about the same length of time, which is way into the last century. And basically nothing has changed at all, because it's the heads of the networks all say exactly the same thing, and they have that we're concerned with foreign value, we're concerned with repeatability, we're concerned with costs. And it's really not true. What they're concerned with is the first number on the network, and in that sense it's becoming almost exactly like the feature film business, right, where the first weekend is the only weekend that matters, because that's the weekend that people's jobs depend on. If the picture opens, they keep their jobs. If the picture doesn't open, they get fired fairly quickly, and it's basically the same thing in network television.
Except we don't get fired.
No.
Not the producers. They just cancel you.
But to be more precise, do you think a show like Chicago Fire, a cop show or something like that will be more, will sell more internationally than a fantasy or something like or a show like Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that?
I certainly hope so, because it's more my kind of storytelling. But I think that the shows that, you know, that I think that the networks or the production entities have been sort of disappointed with the foreign sales on high concept shows. The ones that sell are kind of a denigrating way of putting it would be meat and potatoes. The other way would be traditional television.
Yeah. There is a new, not say a new trend, miniseries are back, as you notice.
Event programming. It's not called
now it's called event programming, but basically we all know it's called miniseries because it's from the 80s, the 90s, obviously. Dick, what do you think of that? Did you think this is viable? Do you think it's interesting to do this? Do you think it attracts stars that are usually not on television because it's a shorter skin of work?
Yes to all of the above. I'd like to do it. I just don't know how anybody makes any money at it, because they're more expensive per hour than traditional programming, and what the aftermarket for those limited series are, or event programming are, is yet to be determined. The good news is that people seem to be willing to risk large sums of money, and almost all of this is on cable, not network, because one series can establish a complete identity for a cable network that Showtime wasn't Showtime until what is it on Homeland came on. The closer defined TNT. Original programming is an expensive way to get branded.
Well, and I think with the networks now interested in event programming, it comes out of the kind of like, you know, it goes back to the opening weekend idea, which is if they can draw a big number for an event, it'll hopefully support the other series. So they're willing to take the risk now, where they never were, where they haven't been for a long, long time, and that was proven by, you know, like Hatfield and McCoy's.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
history
where suddenly it was like, oh, you know, this is the way to get people to come to dinner. Yeah.
Tom, you are developing a Billy the Kid mini-series.
Yes, I am.
Right now. Can you tell us more about this and how did you tackle that, the fact that it will be in difference from an ongoing series?
Well, it will be different from an ongoing series in the he will die. He didn't. He did not live that long. He was a young man when he died. What we're going to do is to say it very quickly. The idea of it is two-pronged. One is, what is the yeah, it's one of those things where you find out you're suddenly broadcasted the entire. Well, I'll just keep talking because what I'm going to say is not particularly interesting. The idea was can you examine in a limited number of episodes the love affair, the love-hate relationship that Americans have with guns? Can you examine what brings a young man to commit violence repeatedly over the course of his short life? The other, and the great thing about it is it allows us to deal with a very, you know, current subject matter, certainly in America, without kind of preaching about it. It's a cowboy. It's cowboys, and so it's buried in this kind of iconic legend of Billy the Kid. So that's what makes it very exciting. I find the more I do shows that I love history, and as I know Dick does, and the more shows that I do that are historical, the more I realize how much more fun they are to write than contemporary drama. Because in contemporary drama now, as opposed, you know, if a guy wants to tell his girlfriend that he loves her, he texts her, right? Honey, I love you. It's all misspelled, and it's just not particularly romantic. Back in the day, you had to get on a horse. You had to ride through the rain, and the snow, and the wind, and you climbed off the horse, and you ran to her arms, and you grabbed her and hugged her and kissed her and said, I love you. Now, which would you prefer in the course of a day? So that's why I like writing historical drama.
Is Billy going to be the ugly Billy or the good-looking Billy?
Well, according to his girlfriend at the time, that photograph, the one photograph we have of him, was a bad photograph. And having spent a lifetime of bad photographs taken of me, I'm willing to go with the girlfriend that he was better looking than that.
Did you ever see the girlfriend?
I don't know. I haven't. No, I haven't. Yeah.
But do you think, do you prefer to develop this as a mini-series, I mean, as an event series, or as an ongoing series, maybe to go for 3 seasons, or something like that?
To me, it's about character and story. It's like the difference between writing a novel and writing a television series, or writing a 2-hour movie versus writing a radio play or something. It depends on what the character and the story and the theme are best served, and then that's what it should be, as opposed to trying to turn Billy the Kid into a 7-year series would be. It would be, and on Thursday. So.
Dick, is format selling still something quite interesting and hard for producing? There is a lot of format selling for the Law & Order franchise, still is. Law & Order UK is still running. Did you plan...
Russia.
In Russia, too? Did you plan, for example, from right at the beginning, did you have in mind the fact that Chicago Fire might be UK Fire or something like that?
Hope springs eternal. I mean, I think these shows, because it is so identified with Chicago, there are fire departments in all major cities. If the show lasts and has legs, it'll be an interesting question again, whether the potential exists for format sales, and as we move forward in the marketplace, it's going to be interesting to see the determination of what is actually more valuable, selling dubbed episodes of the original into Europe and the rest of the world, or doing localized versions. The latter is obviously a much more expensive proposal, but the shows do very well in Russia and pretty well in England for now 4 or 5 years. So the right product, I think, can go around the world. But again, economic determinism is going to be the key factor in this, which makes the rights holders generate more revenue.
But that's very interesting. Do you think did you feel there is some appetite more for local produce shows, I mean local version, or dubbed, the dubbed one?
It seems to be what's happening. I mean, the thing that's really interesting from an American point of view is the number of format sales into the U.S. 2 years ago it was the Israelis, last year it was the Swedes, next year it'll probably be the Danes. You know, that these countries, hot crime writers emerge, and all of a sudden that's this year's flavor.
I hear there's a hot show coming out of Luxembourg.
There very well may be. What is Benelux Bunko.
And Dick, how are you involved in these other formats, in these other versions of your shows? Are you involved in Law & Order UK? Are you in which way?
Well, it's Shine and Kudos and Stephen Garrett, who is the managing partner, and I have a very good relationship. In Russia, it's the same type of thing. We speak, I would say 3 or 4 times a year. How are things going? The Russians say, can we start doing our own scripts? No. It's that type of dialogue, that there are always there are moving parts, but it's been a remarkably successful series of relationships, and I think all of us would work together again if the opportunity presented itself.
There is another trend for the last few years, which are international co-production. And Tom, you are very much involved. You're one of the first. We are one of the very first to do that with Borgia, still running for his first 3rd season. What can you tell us of this experiment, or of this experience, to produce a show for the international market and not for a local market first?
Well, I mean, first of all, the difference with Borgia was that we went into production without an American sale, which was, I think, the single biggest difference of our show over any other show that happened before. I would say that what was wonderful for me was that Canal Plus wanted very much to start making television shows with an American-style showrunner. And the very first conversation that I had with them, I said, do you really mean it, or you just want me to come and sort of, walk around? And they said, no, we really want you to teach as we go. We want you to teach our young artists how to do this, which I'm very committed to. So it's been remarkable. They have, I'm dealing with a French studio, a French network, a German studio, a German network, and everybody has very strong opinions, but everyone ultimately defers to me. I have never been told no in the entire 3 years we've done the series. And so for me, it's been a really joyous experience. Shooting in Prague and in Italy, being a Sicilian American. Shooting there in Italy has been extraordinary. And I'm developing a number of things for other, to do here in Europe.
Did you find the same kind of freedom producing Borgia than you had at the time producing Oz for HBO?
I would say it's the closest.
Because hearing from you talking about that, I was thinking about this, really, that it seems to be the same kind of relationship.
Absolutely. HBO, when we developed Oz, was incredibly supportive and encouraging with the kind of crazy ideas that I had. That's the same experience I've had with Borgia. It's been wonderful. And I'm of an age, unlike Dick, who is eternally youthful. I am falling apart, and I don't know how many more series I will have. I keep selling them, hoping that they won't figure out that I'm 61 years old. But at some point, they're going to actually look and see that I'm 61, and they're going to pull the plug. But I don't know how many series I actually have left in me, because it's a lot of emotional and spiritual and physical work. And so I've just considered myself incredibly blessed to have sort of taken this lap around Europe to do Borgia. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to go to work every day.
I have a question that maybe make French people here cringe a little bit. Why do you think international co-producers ask for American writers?
Well,
because you are better? Because
No. I think it's because the showrunner way of working is a very specific way of working, and it was really important to me initially to have writers that I knew and trusted. Because when you get in the trench, you want to be able to turn to the guy to your left and know he's going to shoot as well as you can shoot. But over the 2 years, we have now 2 French writers working on the show. One is, the titles get a little murky, but one of them is what I would call a story editor in America, and the other is a writing intern who is now writing her first episode of Borgia. Hopefully as we speak. So my commitment to developing, right now it's French talent, but I would say European talent is, I really want to, it's not like we have some big secret. It's really a craft show running as opposed to
the last 50 years. I mean,
yeah,
basically.
But I mean the system works, so that's the reason to try to bring it here, is that it works.
Dick, are you interested in producing sometime an international series without Universal, with international networks? International producers.
Strangely, it may sound strange. I would love to do selected long form, whatever we want to call this, for anybody who wants to pay for it. We have several projects that are secret passion projects. For the last 7 years, I've been trying to get Genghis Khan made, and I think that's the greatest broad sweep story that's never been told in history. I mean, the guy conquered more land than anybody in the history of the world, and he only had to fight for about 5% of it, because they had a very good system that if they were coming to your town, because the Mongol army was 100,000 warriors with 10 ponies apiece, so 1 million horses would be coming towards you, which you heard for about a day before they arrived. And the Mongols did it the same way every time. They sent in emissaries and said, send out your king and the family, and everybody else stays, and everything stays the same, and you keep your language, your religion, whatever way you want to do business. You send 10% back to us, and life goes on. Of course, if you don't take this deal, we kill everybody. And they only had to do that a couple of times. And he invented paper money. There's a whole cursive writing. He was one of the most truly Renaissance men before the Renaissance in the history of the world. And he has one public image and another image of what some of his less bloody accomplishments were. I think it's a fabulous story, but I'm not quite sure who the partner is, because...
You think it will be more suitable to an international production instead of being on a History Channel in the US?
History is, I'd love to see History.
I say so because we just produce Vikings and maybe...
Oh, yeah. And they're now getting into the scripted business in a bigger way with Klondike. There are partners out there, but I suspect that this, to be viable, is going to have to be an international co-production, and you know, that's something that you take baby steps, and then somebody hits you with a fly swatter, and you go back and start over again.
Just hope it will be produced one day.
I hope so.
Just
I think it's just an incredible story, and that's, I think, what we're always looking for, is just haven't seen that before.
I would like both of you, before taking questions from the people, to talk about the thing everybody talks about, the new trend that Netflix, binge viewing, the fact that now it's possible for one channel to have all the episodes at the same time to be seen as the viewer wants. Do you think something, this kind of viewing, of this kind of producing is viable? Did you think it might change the way you produce your work, or you choose to do TV series? Do you think it has an impact on the international market? Because right now it's only on Netflix in the US. In France or in other countries, the show will be seen on regular channel, one episode or two episodes a week. Do you think it changed something for you?
I think it's going to change. I think it's eventually, like all the other major changes, going to change the business completely over the next decade. What shape is going to shake out of that? I don't have a clue. I think anybody who says they do, I'd like to take that drug. Because there are different revenue, there are now revenue streams that will turn into revenue rivers, and there are revenue rivers that are going to dry up completely. And trying to stay conversant with the bottom line is going to become hopefully much more varied, but much riskier until it sorts itself out, because I don't even know what to hope for, whether you get a big check from Netflix, or whether stuff goes on Hulu, or whether you hold it back and try to get a syndication sale on a basic cable network. But are they going to be buying our shows if they're already available for 2 years on Netflix before nobody knows, and the viewing patterns are not established. And the other thing is that there are very few standalone hours being done, that they're very much serialized. And it goes back to that first weekend, first time on the network. What's the big number that first time out? That still makes a huge difference on network and is relatively unimportant on cable. So there is no business model that you can look at and say television and figure it out. Every deal now is different, and the sources of financing on a lot of them are sources that didn't exist 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Did you take in mind the impact of the web, the internet, right now?
It remains to be seen. I mean, my 20-year-old has taught me more about television than anybody else, because 2 years ago I said, "What do you watch?" And he said, "I don't watch television." I said, "I know you watch television because I know some of the series you watch." He said, "Yeah, I'll watch it if I can download it." So about 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I said, "What are you downloading?" He looked at me like, "You're really old, Dad." He said, "I don't download." He said, "If it ain't streaming, I ain't watching. Why would I want to be tied to a TV set?" So that, to me, is the future, that it's TV everywhere now, but people are not going to be sitting in their living rooms tied to a box. They're going to watch stuff when they want to watch it. And, you know, he discovered Breaking Bad last summer and watched 15 episodes in 2 days. You know, that's, what are you going to do? That's, it's different than when we were much younger.
But will it influence the way you're writing this show? Did you have that in mind?
I think, you know, not to beat the novel analogy to death, when you're doing a serialized television series, it is like writing a novel in the sense that everything has to connect over the course of time. So I don't think content-wise it would have a huge effect on the way I write the show. It certainly hasn't, because Borgia is on Netflix in streaming on Netflix through in the United States. I will say they did step up and write a huge check, which they probably had buyer's remorse the minute they did. But then we were in the top 10 with no advertising. It was sort of, we couldn't really figure out what was going on because they wouldn't do any advertising, and they said, well, we'll just let our subscribers know, and then it did very well for them, so they ended up writing another check. But it hasn't affected the storytelling at all. And I think what's going to be interesting for people who used to do what we would call water cooler conversations, where the next day at work you'd discuss what happened that night on some TV show. I think now it is going to be like a novel, whereas some people read novels very quickly and other people read novels very slowly. And so you're going to run up to somebody and go, did you read blah, blah, blah? Did you watch blah, blah, blah? And you'll go, oh, well, I'm only seen 2 episodes. And and they'll have to go like, well, all right, I'll talk to you later, you know.
Spoilers and things like that,
yeah. So it'll, eventually we're going to get back to reading, I believe. This is all a subtle plot to...
That's a good conclusion. But now maintenant, c'est à vous d'intervenir. Donc, Serge.
Hello, Serge Risky from magazine Écran in France. I would like to ask 2 questions to Dick. The first one is about Genghis Khan. Did you already write something about it, or it's just an idea?
I own what I think most people would consider the definitive book on the subject. And it's a great read. It's a question of there's not much sense in writing it until we know the scope. Is it a 3-hour movie? Is it 6 hours? Is it 8 hours? Because it could easily take 8 hours to tell properly.
Yeah. The second question is that you're very prolific. When you start a new series, I imagine at the beginning you're the showrunner. But when it goes on, do you delegate the show running to somebody else, or you follow to the end?
No, I don't consider myself. I have not run a show since the first 2 years of Law and Order. That I have been blessed with being able to hire over the years some of the best writers in the business who stay on for gratifyingly long periods of time. Renee Balsay started out as a staff writer on Law and Order the first season, ended up being the executive producer for around 8 years, 7 years, won an Emmy, then went on and was the exec producer on Criminal Intent. That Neil Baer came over the second year of SVU and stayed for the next, I don't know, 11 years. And then Warren Light, who is just an incredible showrunner, one of the best playwrights in New York, has been running that show for 3 years. Before that, he ran Criminal Intent. So and now the same situation exists on Chicago Fire, that Michael Brand and Derek Haas created the show, but Matt Olmstead is the showrunner. And again, most of us have had, if we haven't worked with each other, you are within the orbit of certain people. That Matt worked in the Bochco organization for around 8 years, so he, I guess, was properly trained. I mean, he hit the ground. He's just been fantastic for us, and is also the showrunner on Chicago PD. So my philosophy is, God forbid, the idea of sitting down and writing episodes now is, I don't know, he still does it on yellow pads. I think the thing I do best as a producer is hiring obsessive people. that you cannot pay people to work the way you have to work on our shows. And some of the other people I work with are here this morning. Peter Jankowski has been with me for more than 20 years. The secret of this is to get professionals that you can depend on.
Hello, my name is Nathalie Leon-Morley. I'm a writer and a producer. It's a question for Tom Fontana, but for Dick Wolf as well. Would you consider being a script doctor on a project you wouldn't be the creator of at some point, that you wouldn't have originated?
You know, I like Dick, you know, you develop a lot of different projects, some with other writers. I do find that being obsessive about writing, I find that I don't give it as much as I do my own writing, the shows that I conceive. So I always feel like I'm having an affair. I'm cheating, and I try, but my mind is never fully on the other project. It's always on the thing I'm writing at this moment. So it's tough. But we are developing a lot of things right now with other writers. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
D'autres questions?
Stun them into silence.
Hi, I'm Vivien from French magazine L'Écran Fantastique. I'd like to go back to the last question that Alain asked you. Are you, for both of you, are you involved in the release of the DVD sets, the box, the Blu-ray? Because in the end, it must be the final home for your series, for your work in people's home. So are you involved in the extra, the quality of the release?
Yeah, I mean, contractually, we're involved, and with Borgia, I now have the French version, the German version, and the American version, all of which I had to approve the art. The American Lionsgate, the company that puts out the Borgia DVD, of course, unlike the Germans or the French, waited till the day before it went to press to show me the art. And when I dared to say that I didn't like some of it, they went, well, it's too late. So I went, well, then why did you show it to me? And they said, well, we contractually had to. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess you fulfilled your contract. So I'm very happy for you. But this year they promised that the second season I would have real chance to look at it. Yeah.
I'm sure it's true.
You mean I shouldn't trust the studio? Mon Dieu.
D'autres questions?
Hello. I have a question for Dick Wolf. A whole other question. You just have written a book. What was the reason to do that, and will we see that on the screen soon?
Well, the reason, I think that the underlying reason to do it was to see it on a screen somewhere. That doesn't seem to be happening, and I can tell you that for business people, the return on investment on novel writing is really not good. To put it in some perspective, the publishers are thrilled that, as a matter of fact, I have kind of a horrifying contract for 3 more where we're going to deliver the second one, which is just, I'm very grateful. It was an incredible experience and experiment, but when they called up and said, well, we have the sales figures for the first quarter, you did very well. I said, really? They said, yeah, you sold 11,000 copies. I said, excuse me? And they said 11,000. I said, that's good. They said, oh yeah, anything over 10 is for a first book is really good. I said, is this like a financial statement? You're leaving off 3 zeros? You know, it's kind of ridiculous that, you know, it's more people watch the commercials on Saturday morning on NBC. It's just a very low return.
Yeah, but
and
it's
I like
rewarding. As an author, maybe it's rewarding for you.
Tom and I have different points of view on the rewards of pure writing.
Okay.
No, the hope was that this was a character that would turn into a long form, and maybe the second one will, but it's very, they say almost never does the first one. So I said, what about Born? Well, you know.
Hello. Do you think that the increasing number of international production changes or could change the way American shows are done? Does it feel like a new competition?
Well, I would say what it has done, it's sort of put the American studios on notice that they can't bully the European market the way that they once did. So any time that there is a kind of independence, I think good things happen. And again, for somebody who provides content, the more opportunities there are to do the work that we do makes me happy. So it's not like I have any great, love for the American studios that I feel sorry for them. It's pretty difficult to feel sorry for them.
You mean that's interesting that these international productions are taking time slots that are usually devoted to US fare?
What I'm saying is that it makes, whereas the American studios got sort of self-satisfied that they were the beginning and the middle and the end of allowing something to be made, now they're not. They have to kind of get in step sometimes. And I think the combination of what's going on now in Europe and Netflix has really, in a great way, terrified them. Yeah.
I think the interesting thing right now is that, as I said earlier, nobody knows what's coming, and in many ways, I think it's the most exciting time to be in the television business since about 1948. That nobody knows where it's going, and the opportunities, I think, are probably not going to be as defined, but potentially even more interesting than they have been if you have the right product. It's content, and content, because of the plethora of platforms, is becoming more important, not less. And good content is in a decided minority.
Yeah.
Tom, Attila Varga from Hungary. With ours, you pushed some real boundaries on HBO. How did they react when they saw the first script? Like, that's too much, or just give me more?
Well, the wonderful thing about HBO was the amount of freedom they gave me. But when I first went to pitch the idea to Chris Albrecht when he was running HBO, he said something that I never thought I'd hear a network executive ever say, which was, I don't care if the characters are likable as long as they're compelling. And that was like giving a heroin addict all the heroin he would ever want, and there would be no arrests and no effect on the body. I was just like, it's impossible. He doesn't mean it. And he totally meant it. And I think in 6 years, I got one note from HBO, and that was that they felt that the criminal, there was like a flashback where the criminal was pointing a gun at a child for too long. They didn't say they can't point the gun.
It was too long.
It was too long. And I went, well, one note in 6 years, I guess I could make that change, So it was remarkable how supportive they were, always. And I was killing off characters that, were beloved. And, but Dick and I both do that sort of.
No, everyone is killing characters.
Yeah, that's right. We used to actually have like a tally board. How many has Dick killed this week?
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Dick, for being there. Thank you very much, Tom, for being there. Merci à vous, toutes et tous. Bonne journée à vous au Festival de Télévision de Monte-Carlo. Demain matin, on reparlera de production internationale. Et là maintenant, c'est encore une autre production internationale qui arrive, c'est Crossing Lines.